This is an open letter to Mr. Jon Stewart, Stephen Colbert, and Bill Maher. Uh, with all respect in the world, it's about Trump. And what happened that it became Trump, and to all of your astonishment, and some people still don't get it. From what you say, it seems you really are not getting the problem of Trump. Uh, Here's the thing. Look at it as in the most basic sense. In the most basic sense, who is Trump? Uh, Trump, in the worst light, is a trust fund baby, and in the best light, Trump is a developer, real estate developer who specializes in northeast of United States. Mr. Trump is a developer, in base case description, is a developer who specializes in northeast of United States. Now, you gotta think that, okay, so what does, now, the question may arise, some people may say, what developer, he doesn't know his ass from the hole in the ground. But again, I should remind you that even somebody who sucks dicks for a living, after 40 years, even if at the beginning her skills were modest, after 40 years of sucking dick, even the most modestly apt cocksucker becomes a real good cocksucker after 40 years of practice. So the point is this: Mr. Trump, even if at the beginning didn't have a, wasn't really sure what he was doing, and maybe still some people think he still doesn't know what he's doing, but still he's a developer. After 40 years, he'll learn his 3/4 there as a good developer. So here's the thing. This is at the core who Mr. Trump is. And at the core, you see that for the time that infrastructure was, infrastructure in that area of the country that Mr. Trump specializes, Northeast. If in that area, as long as the infrastructure was somehow, upkept and managed throughout the 70s and 80s, because in the 40s and 50s and 60s it was built well, it was managed so and so in the 70s and 80s, and during that same time in the 70s and 80s and 90s, Uncle Sam's managers never stopped fighting overseas. But it's just that they had the budget for fighting overseas, or as I say, expanding the periphery of your imperial tent. For that purpose, that was Korea and Vietnam. At that time, there was some money being spent in those wars. Uncle Sam, unfortunately, Uncle Sam's managers apparently never want to stop fighting. But the point is this: some money found its way to expanding the periphery of the imperial tent. But some of it still got to building the infrastructure and keeping up the infrastructure of of United States. Some money was finding its way to build, and there was hope. There was light at the end of tunnel. So all these developers, what do developers need? Developers need an infrastructure in order to develop. So if there is high-speed rail to have, and if there is a high-speed rail, the developers, there is a chance for them to, increase their wealth by developing around the available infrastructure. High-speed rails, good airports, smaller airports, bigger airports, good transportation system, upkept with new and additional roads so much that, as comparing to China, United States hasn't been building much for the past 30, 40 years, 50 years. Ever since like 1950s, 60s, some in 70s, but then apparently nobody bothered that, we need to continuously expand the transportation network. So that hasn't happened. Continue to expand, upgrade, maintain. And upgrade is, high-speed rail would be considered as an upgrade, which, a government that pays attention to its interior as much as it does to its exterior peripheries, a government who does that puts some money aside for development of the interior, domestic development, maintenance, upkeep. But that hasn't happened. So as a developer, when Mr. Trump, we all know Mr. Trump, he's not, he's not exactly, he loves himself. Let's put it this way. He loves himself, maybe his family. But the point is this gentleman, out of self-interest, has got involved. Self-interest of himself and his family and his firm. Out of self-interest, Mr. Trump has got involved, not because he loves me or he loves you, but he loves himself. And himself is, at least he loves himself, and out of self-interest, is the self-interest of Trump is that there is some infrastructure there so he can build around it and make some fucking money. But if nobody's spending money on the infrastructure and everybody's spending money in oil and in arms, nobody's building infrastructure. Therefore, Mr. Trump can't expand his business, which is development, real estate development. So I believe out of pure self-interest, he sees it. He sees that there's no money being invested in infrastructure. That he sees. He sees there's a problem, but he knows there is money there. We all know. But he also finds out that the money is mostly going to the peripheries of the tent, the imperial tent, to expand the peripheries. So Mr. Trump is sitting in the middle of the tent, and he's out of pure self-interest that his job is real estate development, he needs infrastructure to develop around. Out of pure self-interest, he stepped forward and say, hey, stop the fucking spending overseas. You have spent, we had all these riches, and you're trying to keep expanding the tent, the imperial tent. Stop it. And this is the only part of Trump's message that is important, still important for all his supporters. That's the only part. They don't hear any other part, and they don't care to hear any other part. If you raise a country out of a population based on out of pure self-interest, here's the thing: what capitalism is, consumerism, consumer capitalism has become, is that it's sort of like self-interest is the base of all action. They have left it to that, okay, if it's self-interest, if we leave everybody to try to indulge their own self-interest, then the society will function just fine. It's just leave it to the people, and they will find solution for the shortcomings out of their own self-interest. And this is basically, they have left everything on its own. Therefore, education is expensive. Therefore, this. Therefore, that. But the point is this: self-interest of Mr. Trump and a lot of people in the construction industry and all of that. A lot of their perspective, or Mr. DeSantis probably the same thing. They're like, okay, home. We want more development. We want more. These developers coming and developing. For that, we need better infrastructure, better, upgraded infrastructure. And for that means the money should not go to be expanding the peripheries of the empire. Just, the guy in charge feels his penis is real big. So just for that purpose, we shouldn't. we shouldn't go expand this money on the peripheries of the empire. We should invest some of this money in the at the center of the empire. Now again, it goes. They can't actually, Trump himself came out and said, no, don't touch Medicaid, don't touch Medicare, don't touch Social Security, don't touch this. And he's basically, these are his people. They really can't cut that either, because the same people who want more building at home, who see expanding the peripheries of the empire is not that important, and they want more investment in their own cities and towns, more building at home. These people a lot of them are older, so the Republicans and Trump specifically can't, touch them either. So whatever he says is acceptable, because he's pushing that button that is affecting everybody who's living at the center of Uncle Sam's business. People the infrastructure, the buildings, the maintenance, and the expansion, and building a better transport network. You can always improve the transport network. There is no point in time that you can say no, we have the best transport system. No, there is always improvement. As the technology advances, there is always improvement. Therefore, the Chinese have 1,000 high-speed rail lines. I don't know what is the number, don't quote me the number, but there is a reason Chinese have 1,000 fast-speed rail lines right now as comparing to none in Uncle Sam's land, is because the money has gone to expanding the peripheries of the empire. In Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, Syria, Yugoslavia, and now Ukraine, Georgia, just trying to expand the influence and the empire itself, just expanding the tent. Well, if you're expanding the tent and you're at the expense of neglecting the center, that's when Trump and everybody else who's Trump voter, they all understand there is not enough investment being done at home. There is not enough money at home. As for making their lives a little better, their housing a little cheaper, their education better, their health, nothing, basically. Now, Mr. Trump is not a saint. He doesn't care about your education, your health, or your housing. What he does care about is improving the infrastructure so he and his friends can develop, because bringing the money and putting it in infrastructure, but to make it better. But infrastructure and things related to infrastructure, these are systematic matters. You can't fix infrastructure with one president. You just can't. It just doesn't happen, because like they say, ship of state is like a oil tanker. It takes years for it to just turn around, make 180 degrees. Forget about advancement. So the point is this: I understand tankers. Some of them take, when they're heavy and loaded, they take like 45 minutes to turn around, make a U-turn. Some ridiculous number like that. But the point is this: a country is just like that. Either you're on the path or you're not. If you're not on the path and you have to make a U-turn, it just doesn't take one president, two presidents. It just can't. One term, two terms, it still can't. Unless everybody's on board. And apparently nobody's on board. Everybody is for expanding the periphery of the tent. Everybody who has a vote is all about expanding the territory of the empire, because apparently there's more money in it. But while the people, even the developers like Trump at the center of the empire, are suffering. Imagine this, that developers like Trump are suffering at the center of the empire, just like the common folks, because they have common problem. Their common problem is nobody's taking this care of the center of the empire. And now here's the thing, my capitalist friend who have been lucky in capitalism, dude, if your gated community is doing just fine, or if your secluded corner of the city is doing fine and everything is dandy, well, good for you. But there is all these videos that it's evident that the infrastructure is not fine. Not only it's not expanding and improving, it's not even being maintained. But the reality is, for people, for developers to be developed, this infrastructure constantly needs to be expanding and progressing and making it better. Or you had normal train, now you have fast, high-speed train should be the norm. And then now you have the high-speed trains are the norm, then the ultra-high-speed trains should be the norm. Because this is when actually you take the money and you spend it on things that improves the lives of the citizens. If you do that, then Trump is happy, and a lot of jobs or whatever, the common folks are going to be at least employed, if not happy. So this is the question. So Trump was able to state the right question. The question is, why the fuck we're spending all this money over there playing fireworks, taking sides between people who know very little about, care to know about, picking sides based on which one is going to make me more money, which side is going to make me more money. None of these is ideological, and none of these fights are, sane. Every one of them are insane wars and insane fights, and the only factor in all of them is somebody's getting paid. Very few group of people get very rich off of these, crazy skirmishes, crazy wars. Very few people. And Trump, either fortunately or unfortunately, he himself was not one of those people who had any business in defense. He didn't have defense stocks. He wasn't in defense, and he didn't make money when the peripheries of the empire was expanding. He wasn't making money like 90% of Americans. They don't make money. It doesn't make any difference but if Afghanistan is added to the empire or if it's not added to the empire. Common folks don't care. I mean, in a common, in my preacher friend next door, his life doesn't change if America owns Iraq or it doesn't. Now has full control over Chad or no. Have full control over Morocco or no. He doesn't win or lose anything. He just paid the same he was paid yesterday. So the common folks, really, the expansion of the peripheries of the empire doesn't benefit the common folks. And Trump, but the investment and betterment of the life within the circle of the empire, that is what benefits the citizens, and they understand that. They used to live better with all up-to-date infrastructure in the 50s and the 60s, brand new infrastructure, all good, everybody working, blah blah blah. And then they have seen that slowly over time the attention to the center of the empire has degraded. Rich people only live inside their gated communities and don't see no evil, don't hear no evil. But the infrastructure, apparently the rich, it has got to the point that even the rich, because they can't get richer from development and blah blah blah, have started screaming about what, have started backing Trump. The only factor is that Trump is against the empire. It's not against the empire, it's against the expansion of the empire. Trump made it clear that we no longer need to expand the empire. So he went and shook hands with the Korean guy, Kim Un-sung, Chung Pung. Then he, shook hands with the Chinese and, blew up an Iranian. Fucker. But he didn't go to war with Iran, he just blew one up and then ran away. The reason is, and he pulled out of Iraq and he forced the hand of the next president to pull out of Afghanistan. The reason is because he's a developer. He represents the people whose interest does not lie overseas. And that's the majority, that's like 90% of Americans don't have any interest overseas. 90% of their life doesn't improve if Afghanistan is part of the empire or it's not. Their life doesn't improve if Ukraine is part of the empire or not. 90% of Americans, their life doesn't improve one way or the other. Maybe 5 to 10% of Americans somehow are related to this expansion. Their job, their income is related to the expansion of the empire business. Maybe not even 10%, probably 5% of population. 2, 3, maybe 5, or maximum 5% of population directly benefit from this expansion of the empire business. 5% maximum of the population. So 95% in reality want to vote for Trump, or anybody who plays that same drum, that hey, we're gonna pull back from all these, unnecessary expansions of the attempts at the expansion of the empire, and we're going to take that money that we are using to keep the empire or expand the empire. We're going to take that money and we're going to, put it at the center of the empire, and we're going to rebuild the transportation system. On top of the old one, we're going to build a new one. Right next to the old one, we're going to build a new one. Right next to the old one. We're going to keep the old one and we're going to build a brand new rail network for high-speed rail for the whole fucking country. Brand new, roads right next to the old roads for the whole fucking country. We're not going to create inflation by, paying for both. Paying for that war and this, because that's inflation. One of them has to go. You can either expand the peripheries of the empire or invest in the center of the empire. It has reached the point, defense has become so expensive and so crazy. Offense has become so expensive and so profitable and so crazy that, both parties want it. Both parties who are in charge, who are in power, want it because it fills the coffers. This is one message of Trump. Now, whether he was able to execute, carry out, yeah, he did pull out of Iraq, more or less. Farted in the face of Iranians one last time and more or less pulled out of Iraq. And as much as, as much as it keeps the interest of the United States protected in Iraq. You see, even Trump is not against the empire. Trump is not against the empire. Trump is great with the empire. But Trump is saying that, if you remember, when during his candidacy, Trump said, South Korea has to pay us. What the fuck is this? We're not giving protection for free. Somebody has to pay us. Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, you motherfuckers have to pay up. We are not giving protection for free. Europeans, you gotta pay us. You gotta buy weapons. all this 2%, 2%, 2% of GDP of the NATO members has to go to defense. What does this 2% mean? Who has the the most awesome weapons? Who's producing the most awesome weapons? Some of Uncle Sam's corporations are making some of the most awesome weapons. You know, Raytheon and Lockheed Martin and Boeing and all of these guys and co. They are making the best weapons, most expensive and the best weapons. And Uncle Sam forcing the NATO members in Europe to telling them that you have to spend 2% of your GDP in defense means you have to come and buy from us, spend with us 2% of your GDP. Exactly what Trump showed when this king of Saudi Arabia was Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia was visiting Trump like a kid at the school, brought over this made up poster of all the things that this gentleman is buying. 20 of this and 30 of those fighter jets and 50 of these tanks and 100 of those rifles. It just like, you know, a schoolboy came up with his, you know, with his homework, artwork, sitting next to the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia and bragging to the American people that this is how much these people spent with us. You see how much I twisted his arm to buy weapons from me? I twisted his arm a lot. This is how much he bought from me. So it's all about, you know, bringing the dough home and forcing the Europeans, now the Europeans in 2023, because of Ukraine, Ukraine, something that, you know, Uncle Sam's manager, Miss Victoria Nolan and Mrs. Clinton and all of these folks got some fire going in Ukraine. They started the fire, got the fire going, and all these Europeans have shit their pants, and now they're bringing all their money to Uncle Sam's managers to buy weapons. It's sort of like you show them the carnage, and then they will shit their pants, and they will come and spend 2% of their GDP. Where? They will spend 2% of their GDP with Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, and Boeing. This is the whole point. It's all about the money, folks. Salute. It's all about the money. It's all about the money. And Trump was not, his beak was not getting wet because he was not in defense business, in offense business, in bomb business. He was in building business, not bomb business. And his work is concentrated at the center of the empire. Now, the same Trump, so Trump is not against the empire. But he says, pay me to keep the periphery of the empire on top of your head. Pay me. South Korea, you pay me. You want to be part of the empire? You pay me, and we stay. Or else I'm going to shake hands with that motherfucker on the other side and call it quits. And which is the best case scenario. Again, you call it quits, and those are Koreans from the south and the Koreans from the north meet and, you know, somehow integrate their governments. They will try a little more communism, doesn't work, they will try capitalism, like the Chinese have. The separation is the problem. Spending money on keeping the separation is the problem. Having, you know, military on standby on the other side of the planet, which is, I believe that they're all, you know, it's been 50s, 40, 50, 60, 70 years that Uncle Sam's soldiers are literally over there on standby. They're not doing much, but they're always on the standby. A large number. This costs money. All of this costs money. While, you know, there's no high-speed rail network back home. So Trump is saying that, okay, We don't need to expand the peripheries of the empire. I love the empire. I will kill for the empire, like he did, that Iranian general. I kill for the empire, but I will not try to expand the empire through war because it costs a lot. Costs a lot, not because I hate killing people, just because it costs a lot. So we're going to keep the empire as is. We're not going to expand and try to charge the locals for the protection we provide as being part of the empire. We're going to try, force the locals to pay us protection money. This is his idea. And we're going to take our money, instead of trying to expand the empire, we collect money from the peripheries for protection, from the people at the periphery, those peripheries of the empire, but then we keep our own money at the center and we build. This is Trump's idea. This is the idea that all other aspect of Trump's personality is looked over, because every American who doesn't benefit from wars overseas, except because of this idea, anybody, 95% of Americans love Trump in reality. If it wasn't for other crazy aspects of who he is, with just this this perspective that bring the money home, spend it at home on infrastructure. Just for this, he has the kind of followers that he has. Because it's reality, it's fact. And John F. Kennedy, I believe Mr. Kennedy, R.F. Kennedy, John F. Kennedy, Joe F. Kennedy, I don't know, one of these Kennedys who's running has understood this more or less. He said, I will close all the overseas military bases. I will spend that money at home on infrastructure. Joe Kennedy or something Kennedy, I think he's got the message. Now, how much are the Democrats who are getting their beak wet through military spending, how much are they willing to allow Mr. Kennedy to open his wings and take flight? I kind of doubt it, because there are other industries. These politicians can think that in the future, they can get their beak wet with the, businesses that is taking place inside the empire. They can also get their beak wet in that way. But for now, the defense money is very tempting. It's sort of like none of the politicians want to give up their defense fund or the money that they expect from the defense industry and all the perks that they get. It's too sweet. They don't want to give that up. Although logically you can explain to them that eventually, the high-speed rail network that is going to be built is going to, you can wet your beak in domestic expansion as well. You don't need to always think that foreign expansion is going to help wet your beak. That's it. That's the whole Trump. And the funny thing is that he knew the question. He knew what's in the heart of the people. Spend money at home. Make our life a little easier. He took this message. He knew the question, and he got the job. But he really didn't know what to do. He didn't know the answer. He just knew the question. He didn't know the answer. That is, okay, concentrate all the money on infrastructure. And besides, the infrastructure is, it's a very, arduous process. The legislature has to get involved, and eventually they involve the judiciary. And because, politicians are skeptical about how wet they can get their beak with in domestic on domestic projects. So I'm sorry, but Trump does speak for the people. He wants some money to be spent at home so he can make money. And it has got so bad that this, trust fund baby, a developer, I'm sorry, trust fund developer, has got the same problem as, his contractor, as who has the same problem as his handyman. They all have the same problem, and that is there is not enough expansion of infrastructure and improvement of infrastructure back home, progress of infrastructure back home, so they can better their life, build more places, charge higher prices, and make a better life for themselves. They all have the same problem. And if you've noticed, that's exactly how the blue collar workers, that's why the blue collar workers all voted for Trump. Because they see there's infrastructure is falling down, where at the same time they keep hearing in their in their AM radio that we are the best. We are the best, sort of like we have the best weapons. And then the guy looks at his roads and his potholes and his train and realizes that no, maybe not. How is this the best? How is this the best? I tried to get a passenger. I like to give you an example. I like to travel by train when I can. And the problem is that I like trains and I like traveling by trains when I can. But then I looked, when I was living in Arizona, I searched and searched and searched for a passenger train for the schedule of passenger trains from Arizona to California. And I couldn't find any. Now I'm sure there are flights between Phoenix and California, but why not, a train ride? A train ride between Phoenix and Los Angeles should be no more than 3 to 4 hours. A regular train and no more than half an hour high-speed train. That's it. That's one high-speed rail that has to be developed as soon as possible. A high-speed rail between Los Angeles and Las Vegas, and between Los Angeles and Phoenix, Arizona, and a high-speed train to the center, to the capital of all these states, at least should be available. High-speed trains should be available connecting all the state capitals to each other. But there is none. I forget about high-speed passenger train. Regular speed passenger train, I couldn't find one. There wasn't. There is no passenger train going from Phoenix, Arizona to Los Angeles, California at all. I do believe recently they started something. It's like a month ago, 2 months ago. But for the past 50 years, 60 years, apparently there is no passenger train was available. And why is that? Why is there no, high-speed train between Phoenix and Los Angeles? The point is this. My point is this. This could have been there. It costs money. It could have been there, but the money was spent in fireworks over Afghanistan. In the hopes of, I'm not sure winning what. Winning land? You don't think you have enough land? I mean, there's a lot of empty land. Winning hearts and minds? You think you can win hearts and minds when you're armed with an M16? I'm sorry, whenever I see an armed person in the street in the United States, I try to, go and walk the other side of the street. So there is no winning hearts and minds when you're packing heat. When you're packing heat, everybody is trying to keep their distance from you. That's as simple as it gets. So you think you're packing heat. You got an M16. You give an M16 to an 18-year-old soldier. You send him to Afghanistan to win hearts and minds with his M16. I shit my pants when I see an M16 because when you got it, it's you can use it. So you're saying you're not there for land, okay? You're there for hearts and minds with your M16. No, that's not it either. What is there to win in Afghanistan or Iraq or Libya? Territory? You don't think that the locals are going to notice that you're ruling their territory in 21st century with internet? And the funny thing is, the internet was developed by Uncle Sam's military. Now the internet has become a source of headache for Uncle Sam's military. Anyway, that's progress. But the point is this, that you're fighting wars overseas so a few people at the top can make some money. That money that being spent overseas, like they keep saying, blowing up a, a guy who made $1 a day by a soldier who makes $100 a day with a missile that costs $150,000. Who's actually making the money? The guy who's made the missile, not the guy who just got shot, the local who just got shot, not the soldier. That's his job, to shoot people. Then who's making the money? The guy who's just made the $150,000 Javelin missile. He's making all the money and giving a percentage back to the politician to continue the war, expansion of the empire. So this is the whole appeal of the Trump, that he was not about the expansion of the empire. He loved the empire, he just didn't want to expand it because he knows expansion costs money. So he didn't want to expand it. He wanted to draw the line and say, this is all we don't want anymore. We don't want Ukraine. We don't want Taiwan. This is enough for us. This is all we want. Now we want to invest all our money inside. That was his message, and that message sold well. Still sells well because apparently still nobody wants to deliver. I understand the Kennedy wants to deliver such a message, but I don't think the Democrats are going to give him a chance. And still, it's not clear if he does get elected, he actually does deliver, because this is presidential system. It's not a parliamentary system. If he doesn't deliver, you can't take back the job the next day. In this presidential system, if somebody promises A and delivers B, he can still rule for 4 years. Although he has promised A and delivered B, he still gets a full term. In the parliamentary system, at least, in the parliamentary system, the day the guy who promised A, the day he delivers B, that same night they can cast a vote and they can take back the prime ministerial job from him. They have to deliver. They can't promise and go in and not deliver. This presidential system is nuts.